adapt to normal. A normal adaptation would be you'd grow up in a healthy, safe environment, and then you would take, relative risks. Whereas if that's not stable, you'll take greater risks.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like, so we adapt to our environment. What we can do is over adapt when the source of what we should see as safety as not safety. So the need to, whether you can say, do those riskier things, prove myself, even to myself, I sort of dissipate.
This is Leadership Sound Bites. Real leaders, real moments, real growth.
Welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with my very special guest, Jonathan McGuinness, who is a let me read this without my glasses on. Large change program manager. Jonathan, where are you based? Are you in Switzerland?
I change a lot. I'm mostly out of Ireland, but I can often be in
Okay.
Italy or Switzerland or
Okay.
around the world
Yeah, I
somewhere.
knew it was on a different continent than I was at, right? So I'm in
Sure.
California, United States, and I knew you were someplace else. You and I got connected through Sphere with the resilience community. And Sphere, I have to compliment him because he's the collector of really amazing humans. And so I've been blessed to be in the room with him. And you and I recently were on the hot seat coaching that we do with the resilience community. And so I so enjoyed the contribution and the perspective that you brought. And it challenged my thinking in different areas. And so I'm looking forward to being in the room with you today. And I know you have a quote that is like your go-to with what you do for a living to kick us off.
It's not the fastest or the strongest that survive, but the most adaptable. But what does adaptable mean?
I'd love for you to
And I
answer.
let that sit there for a minute, but that's a question that we're going to go down a rabbit hole of, Michelle.
And there are rabbit holes because you're the one that has me think about things differently. And I know the topic that we kind of talked about is this whole definition or this idea around people being risk averse or risk tolerant or whatever it may be. And so that's one of the rabbit holes I think that we're talking about when we're doing this. And so, what's on your mind about this stuff? What's going to kick us off? Because I know you're going to have a challenging way of thinking and looking at stuff.
Well, to just give you a little bit of, I've lived around the world. I've lived in at least 10 or 12 countries, move regularly, bring family, everything. And people give me loads of excuses. You can't do this, you can't do that. I have four fantastic boys who are well adapted to the world. And I kind of go, well, why not? But then I asked myself, well, why the hell did I do all of that? Why have I pushed myself into situations so many times, exposed my vulnerability in a very unusual way, whether that's jumping out of a plane or going to a new country where I don't speak the language to do a project. And I've done it multiple times, almost like an addiction, you could say. And a lot of people who either know me or don't know me would say, Jonathan loves risk. He just embraces change. And up until probably a year or two ago, I would have agreed with that, and I think most people have the idea that there's people who avoid risk and they're conservative, and there's people who love to do dangerous and adventurous things. And it clicked with me. Well, is there two types of human brains? I didn't think so. I'm studying psychology, communications, just being a human being for over 50 years. No, there's only one type of human brain. So what is it that makes that difference? And I'm not sure where I heard bits and pieces came together. Anything I come with is not necessarily original. It's an aggregation of listening to wonderful, clever people.
Yeah.
Fundamentally is it's not a we're our brain is a detection and prediction system. It's there to protect us, and it does that by watching out for threats and predicting what will happen. So that means we're all risk adverse. But then why would people behave in one way and some other people behave in the other way?
Hmm.
Well, the question is, in their mind, whether that's in time or space, where do they see the source of that risk?
Hmm.
So most people, I would say, see the source of the risk in the unknown, what they can't categorize, what they're not aware of. So I'll do what I already do and I'm safe. that's considered risk averse, or we'll say normal. But some people, they see risk in their home, where they're familiar, where they grow up. And then the unknown feels more safe than where they're from. So
Mm-hmm.
they're actually still risk adverse, but they're just trying to get away from the source of that risk. The same as the risk adverse person is trying to get away from the unknown, they're trying to get away from the known. And I
Mm-hmm.
happen to fall into that category. And I was so adamantly driving in that direction that I kept exposing myself. I've done everything: marathons, bungee jumps, traveled the world, sailed around the ocean, the Irish Sea, whatever. But I didn't realize that I wasn't doing that just in an expansive, explorative manner, even though I have a lot of that in me. It was
Mm-hmm.
because the known felt more restrictive, more trapping, more uncomfortable than the
Mm-hmm.
unknown, even if it meant putting myself at risk. And it really sort of helped me understand myself. And then when
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to other people as well, I'm not saying there's multiple types of people. I'm just wondering where's the source of either their risk or maybe their love. You know what I mean? The connection side. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I now start to think of humans as humans. But where is the source of the things that they want to be or are in search of? And that's
Mm-hmm.
been much more insightful than having models. It's kind of where are the sources, and then it almost like they unveil themselves what the problems are with that type of thinking. So that was the idea I think I was attempting to express the other day, Michelle.
Um, it's an interesting thing that you talk about because a number of things come to mind for me. And part of it is around what I share with leaders all the time and try and encourage myself is to lead with curiosity, right? And so when we step into that space and you're talking about this, the rest of the story, if you will, or what the foundation is we don't know what we don't know. And so before we put a label of you're risk averse or you thrive in risk or adventure, whatever that is, there's this importance in having curiosity in the rest of the story. And so when you were talking about your um I don't epiphany is probably too strong a word, but your discovery a few years back that said, I'm actually not that narrative that I was giving before, right? It's just that the risk that I was avoiding was the comfortable and the known and not the unknown. And that's what my subconscious was driving toward. Um, what changed for you, Jonathan, when that discovery happened for you?
So that's why I like the saying I said at the beginning: it's not the
Yeah.
fastest or the strongest survive, the most adaptable. So adapt to normal, adapt a normal adaptation would be you'd grow up in a healthy, safe environment, and then you would take, relative risks. Whereas if that's not stable, you'll take greater risks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, so we adapt to our environment. What we can do is over adapt when the source of what we should see as safety as not safety. So the need to, whether you can say, do those riskier things, prove myself, even to myself, has sort of dissipated. So for me personally, and then when I work with, whether that's clients or people, I can feel that they're over adapting
Mm,
potentially, like I was, because you can only see it once you've got past it yourself in a way. Like that's something could be right, a problem could be right in front of my eyes, but if I haven't crossed the boundary of that understanding, I still won't see it.
mm,
So in this one now, it becomes so much easier for me to understand where the authentic person in front of me is versus the person who's maladaptive to the environment that they
mm-hmm,
were in. And that then allows me to get curious on that
mm-hmm,
gap, like you just said.
mm-hmm. Um, I so agree because I think we approach people differently. I've talked to leaders and coached around like performance improvement to where typically, right, what I see the cycle goes is you have someone who's not meeting standards, their performance is low. And leaders will go and repeat the same stuff. You've got to hit this target. This has to be improved, da, 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 da. And if we think about it, do we actually believe that that human, if we assume the best intent, doesn't know what the expectation is? You've said it over and over and over again, right? And you get to the point that you're frustrated. They know, but there's something getting in the way of them being able to hit it. And so for me, I'm going to step in with curiosity and not assume, right, that they just don't know, or I'm going to tell them again, or I'm going to get more firm, or I'm going to hold them accountable. Is I'm going to say, hey, help me understand what's getting in the way. We both
Absolutely.
know this is the expectation, but what's getting in the way? And then listen.
Yeah, I like that, and I would go in a similar direction. And I think you almost have to go to the ultimate point, which is we're talking about truth and we're talking about feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Possibility is that that person you're going to talk to might not even want to be there. So you got to start with, do they even want to be here in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're not performing, either they don't want to be there or they have another priority beyond their work that's far more important to them, or there's something distracting them from where they be. And the person that you're talking to probably isn't being honest with themselves or honest with you. So you I love brutal, honest feedback. And I would say, I have a prompt for my chat GPT. I can share it with the audience afterwards.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid to press enter on my chat GPT because it says, don't let me away with excuses. You're a very smart advisor. Tell me the brutal, honest truth. So every time I press enter, it says, well, Jonathan, are you looking for a new shiny object again? Or, why are you asking me this question when your goal is this? And it's like, for me, I used to think of a friend as someone who is always supportive. Now, supportive can mean many different things, but always a cheerleader. But sometimes we don't need a cheerleader. Someone we need to say, John, your jumper looks horrible. Dress up better, and you'll be, you'll give a much better impression, or whatever it is that they might
Yeah.
need to say to me in that moment. And obviously, the hardest ones to say are something about someone's character when they, if they're not integrous, if they lie, even to
Mm-hmm.
themselves, because you have to lie to yourself before you can lie to somebody else, even.
Mm-hmm.
So if I love feedback about my character, and somebody will say, well, Jonathan, you're giving yourself excuses, and that's why I made the prompt that I did for ChatGPT. And a really good friend won't let you off the hook. They'll
Mm-hmm.
hold you. And in a way, a really good friend is prepared to lose your friendship because the truth is so important. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a hard thing to hear. And a lot of people wouldn't want it, is they're prepared to put the relationship at risk for the truth to stay alive. And there's
Mm-hmm.
not many people like that, Michelle.
I'm bobbleheading and agreeing with you. The interesting part, I say this a lot to people, is words matter. And the most important words are the ones we say to ourselves. And so when I hear brutal, right? Brutal is the opposite of caring. So I think I'm gonna respectfully disagree, and I'm gonna love to hear what your thoughts are, because you're obviously not bobbleheading, you're going the other way. When I hear brutal, okay, I have a meaning for brutal, right? My body will react to brutal. And others may have a similar reaction. That being said, I do want honest and real feedback that's helping the human, me or someone else. I want people to move forward. I want them to learn and grow. I want real, honest feedback. It doesn't have to be brutal, just real and honest. And it's the same
Sure.
thing talking with Chad. It's like, don't blow smoke. I don't want you to, like, it's like what was there, a fable around the king that, went around, everybody goes, oh my gosh, sire, you look awesome. And basically he's got his underwear on because someone has told him that.
Emperor with no clothes. Yeah.
Yes, yes. But it's one of those things, is don't blow smoke. because and especially depending on your role, if you're a leader in an organization, or if you're a coach for somebody else, or you're a paid consultant, don't blow smoke, because you're there to do a job. When you're a friend, you're there to do a job. I've had coaching clients, and I totally agree with you, and one that is now a dear friend, but I've probably coached her 10 or 11 years now. And there's times that we got off that phone call that I thought, she's never going to speak to me again, because I literally held up the mirror and was honest and challenging her current thinking to get her out of her current thinking, which that it needed to happen. And years later, she looks back and she's like, "Thank God you stuck with me." But I totally
Absolutely.
agree with you, is that we need to do that. But for me, because of the charged meaning in that word brutal, for me it's honest and real, because it's what we're here to do.
Sure. And I'd like to answer that one, Michelle, is in
Yeah.
I probably agree with you in brutal, but it's there for a purpose. It's a little bit provocative. And the reason why I say that is when I tell you the truth about some things, it'll probably hurt.
Mm-hmm.
You might get offended, you might feel sad, you might feel angry at me, you might feel afraid for seeing yourself for who you are. There's all of those things. So it is a bit brutal, honestly. It can feel brutal. I'm not saying it is brutal with intent, but the feeling on the other side of that truth can be very, very brutal. So it can dismantle your world if you
Mm-hmm.
hit the right topic in the right time, in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So my intent is not for me to be brutal towards you, me to be truthful, giving you honest feedback may feel brutal to you though.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my intention. So it's where that word resides. It can reside with the listener, the feeling
Mm-hmm.
of he's being brutal
Mm-hmm.
with me, but it's my intent is far from it. It's coming with, I would say, respect, with
Mm-hmm.
love, but it the brutality happens to ourselves. We create that brutality. I love a lady called Brené Brown. I don't know if you've heard of her.
Yes. Most humans, I think, have heard of Brene Brown.
And I really like the definition that she has of four words. There's embarrassment, there's guilt, there's humiliation and shame. And embarrassment, we feel a little bit, I don't want to get up and speak. Guilt is, I feel bad because I should have done something and I didn't do it. Humiliation is if I try to make you feel bad and I go, I don't like the look of your blouse, Michelle, I'm trying to, that won't matter unless you convert that into shame and say, oh, Jonathan said something about my blouse. Oh, I don't feel comfortable about it. I
Mm-hmm.
feel now bad about it. So that conversion from humility into shame that's where I talk. I can come with love and respect, but you could turn that feedback into brutality or into shame yourself. It's
Mm-hmm.
not me doing that. And I think she's a fantastic teacher, or at least that list of definitions is something I often tell many people because then they realize, oh, even if someone's been bad with me, unless I agree with it won't matter. Like if you say, Jonathan, I don't like your blue hair. Thank you very much. I have hair now. It's not that it's even blue. I have hair.
Well,
Thank
actually, we're
you.
like, Jonathan has blue hair. I don't even.
Exactly. So it's that internal conversion. And when I use words sometimes, I'm not using the word for me. I'm using the word for the listener. And for me, the communication is what you hear. It's not what I say.
Sean, is it Mayer Maher? Anyway, it was a recent guest on the podcast. I don't think it's dropped yet. But he's a communication, that's his space that he works in. And when you just said that, it is about the responsibility of, are people grasping what we're throwing or communicating to them? And I think a lot of it that you hit on is intention. So if my intention, which is where I think it's so important, is to help you move forward, grow and develop, get out the other side of what this thing is that you're in, this valley or whatever it may be, um, there's a different level of energy that comes with that. And depending on how the human catches it, grasps it, whatever's going on, it's important for us, depending on what role you're in. I'm going to say the role of coach and consultant, because you're helping organizations navigate through change, MA, all the stuff. I mean, I've got a group that I'm going to be working with later today. They're going through a great deal of change. And so it's a group coaching session with people leaders in the organization to help them manage and, team cohesion, team trust, all the stuff. I have no idea where they're at and where their teams are at. So it's a matter of stepping into this thing and helping people navigate through based on where they are now. That being said, we have a responsibility to pay attention to how this stuff's landing, right? Especially when we're going to come with this intention of, I want to help, grow, learn, move forward, navigate through whatever, adapt, not over adapt, but adapt. And so I need to pay attention to when I'm giving you real feedback and honesty and all the stuff. Is it landing okay with you? Did it crush you just now? Or did you take it and you're pissed? And I'll deal with pissed versus crushed. Pissed, you're going to work through at some level, right? Come back to me and talk. As long as there is a relationship there. And I think that's part of the stuff you talked about with family, a coach, whatever it may be. There is some underlying relationship that we've already established, familiarity, trust, hopefully, all that, to where when we give this real feedback, it's not coming out of left field, or people are not as quick to tell themselves a different story. It's an interesting thing to watch. It's not going to stop me from doing it, but I'm going to be less likely first out of the gate when I meet someone to give them that level of feedback versus we've got to establish relationship. But that being said, I've given people that feedback right out of the gate too. But I have to gauge the relationship and where they're at. So yeah.
Yeah, so there was a couple of thoughts that came when you were talking about that, Michelle. One is we have to see where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And I I think we have an interesting relationship with the past, with the present, and with the future. And wherever we put our focus is what we become. Well, we naturally be, if we focus, people who focus on their goals a lot arrive to them faster.
Mm-hmm.
People who focus on now, depending on how they do it, if they do it gratefully or begrudgingly, that's a whole other story. People who focus on their past, they need a lot of help.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes bypassing the past or the present just brings everybody in a similar direction towards the future. Now, we don't want to live in an illusion completely either, but it allows more room for creativity, because even the life you or I have right now is just the cumulative feedback of everything we've done till now. And even though I might have changed in the past few months, my environment mightn't have caught up with my new way of being yet, but it might in 3 months' time. So focusing on where they're at now isn't always, and it depends person to person, especially if they're going through some sort of change, isn't necessarily accurate, because they're not fully aligned with the changes that they've made recently, and their environment is about to change anyway. So I think working mostly with the future allows us more creativity and allows someone who's already going in change a chance to align with not just the future of the group, but their own future that's been created by what they've been doing in their own lives. So I think how we frame that is very helpful or detrimental to allowing that change to evolve through the people or through a team.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. There's a nuance change in that thing versus meeting people where they're at, understanding and seeing how things land. And it could be communication change coming up, all that stuff, feedback on what's going on, performance stuff, all the thing. What came to mind for me is when in your world and my world too, is helping people navigate through change, which by the way is change in behavior. It could be any habits, it could be organizational change that's coming from the outside. It's allowing people to see themselves in that future change, I go back to ADCAR, which is ProSci's, acronym for the change journey we all go through: awareness, desire. We make the personal decision to step in and support the change. Knowledge, I understand what's expected of me. Ability, I can thrive in the post-change world. And reinforcement, the stuff's in place so we don't go back to the old way. So that journey that we go through has a lot to do with what you're talking about. And if we've anchored ourselves in the past, and oh, by the way, the only way that past comes with us is if we bring it. Okay. And there are plenty of
Absolutely.
people that are frickin' bringing along for the ride. And it's like, with forward looking, it can be anxious, and people can get stressed about that because there's a lot of unknowns. And as leaders or consultants or coaches, it's about helping people see themselves in that future, whatever that may be. So, what's going to be better for me? What's in it for me when I do this stuff? What's no longer a problem that I'm currently dealing with? So it's co-creating and co-painting what that future is. I agree with you. And the word that I shared with leaders, especially when we're going through COVID, is our role as a leader is it's important to give people hope. And I think that's part of navigating whatever change journey is, that people have hope that what's coming, because we have fear of the unknown a lot of times, because to your point, our subconscious is keeping us safe and using the least amount of energy, by the way, which change requires more energy. But you've got the unknown. And so it's important to paint the picture for people so they can see themselves in whatever this future state is. And a lot of times leadership doesn't do that. They do it at an organizational level, at the top of the house, at a macro level, but not individually for where do you fit into this stuff going on.
Absolutely. I got blessed, Michelle, because I was born in Ireland. So I grew up speaking Irish as well as English. And the construct of the language is very different on a philosophical level.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say in English we say I'm sad or I'm happy. In Irish, we say it's tá sásta orm, tá tíosa orm, which means sadness or happiness come upon me like a wave and it goes away again. So it's not that I am or my identity is never associated with sadness or happiness. It's okay, I'm going to get a wave of sadness and it's going to go away. So my identity is remains sovereign and autonomous and free, no matter what change of emotional weather there could be there. But it's
Mm-hmm.
also the same for, you don't say I have a house, you say chop the gum. I am with a house. So it's an
Mm-hmm.
object in the world that I'm with. So my identity is like I own a fancy watch, a Rolex or whatever. It's not, there's a watch with me coming on this journey. And having that, we say, identity, which doesn't really get penetrated by advertisements, for example. They often make, beautiful people wear certain clothes or,
Yeah.
smell in a certain way. When I see those, because of the way I express myself in language, it doesn't change my identity or doesn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to change, it also gives me freedom. I am who I am no matter what is happening around me, whether that's emotions or things or whatever else it is. So it's almost like you're given this sort of bubble of freedom to pass through the world with. So,
Mm-hmm.
how we construct language in our head and whether we simply associate or, this is where it gets dangerous, identify with something or a feeling, we get stuck with it then. So, how we use language actually determines how stuck or how anchored, as you said, in the
Mm-hmm.
past we're going to be. But if, how understanding language really well and how our mind does that allows us a lot more freedom if we have that in mind.
I so freaking agree with you. And it's interesting. I don't know Irish. I do want to visit Ireland. Um, and like I said earlier, words matter. And I totally agree with you, because you end up with people. I've watched people shift in front of me that they're like, I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. And it's like you literally took on the identity of overwhelmed, to your point. And because of that, the brain will do everything in its power to align our experiences, our behavior, our language, all the stuff, how we feel, to our identity. And so if I've owned that identity, guess what? I'm digging the hole pretty freaking fast. So the shift in language of not saying I am fill in the blank of overwhelmed, but one client I said, so what's happening right now that has you feeling that way? What's happening? The external. Well, it's a new job and a lot of different things and multiple projects. Okay, great. So describe it that way. And so what she said
Absolutely.
was, there's a lot of new and different things happening. And she kind of giggled a little bit. I said, there you go. So she shifted it. 2 weeks later, I met with her, and I've shared this story before, but I've seen it in other humans too. And she shifted that language and came back, and I said, so what's different? Oh my God, everything, everything. She didn't have to tell her fiance, stay away from me. I need time to unwind when I got home. She showed up differently for projects, all because she no longer owned that identity of overwhelmed. And you're absolutely right. And I think it's freaking beautiful that in Ireland, you don't own that identity. You acknowledge it. And what I felt was like waves in the ocean. It came up, it went away. It came up and took stuff with it and went away. Because it's around me, but it's not me. And
Absolutely.
that's so freaking important. So,
Yeah. And like, because when we talk about change, really, I'm in a 50-something-year-old body, 53. But, the me that's here, my body has come and gone. I'm sure every cell has changed 100 times since I was 7 years of age, right? So what's me is a kind of a good question. And it really, I know we're getting kind of almost philosophical here, but if you see you as you and not necessarily, I have wrinkles now. I didn't have wrinkles years ago or whatever, but
yeah.
I still, when there's a party on, I still feel like getting up and dancing the same way or whatever
Yeah.
else it is. So it's like the definition of what you put after I am, as you said, or who helps us actually navigate change independent of what that change is. And
Mhm.
I think just sometimes we need a reminder of that.
No, I totally agree with you. I want to be in the room with you again, sir. We need to do this again. You make me smile because the stories and the history and the perspective that you have, it helps fill in missing pieces for me. So there's stuff that I know because I just know it for whatever reason. There's stuff that I've learned from tons of different people that, I've learned from. And I love just the different way that you approach describing what's happening with humans in the world and what's going on. So thank you for that. What one or two things would you love people to walk away with around this topic that we chatted about that started around risk, by the way, and definition of it. But I think it's all connected too.
I would say there's two things in life we actually have choice or control over. The first one I learned from a guy called Viktor Franklin who survived the war. He wrote a very, very famous book. And even though he was in concentration camps or whatever, he said the one thing they could never take away from him was his attitude.
Mm.
And so even if you're about to die, you can choose to do that gracefully or go screaming or whatever, or do both or whatever. And so our attitude, and I've used that a lot. Like I went running 2 days ago, I did 22K, that's my long run. And in the last 1.5K, it started pelting rain out of the sky. And then I said, I won't repeat the exact words, but it wasn't nice words to the big universe up there. And then I realized, hold on, I'm sweating like a pig and it's raining and cooling me down. And within 2 seconds, I went, thank you. So
Mhm.
rather than going, I went, and like, because of that, and I read that book 30 years ago, I know I have choice. I might have a momentary reaction, but then I say, hold on, is that the reaction I really want to feel? And then I
Mhm.
went, thank you. So the first one is that we can always change our attitude. It's a choice. And some people believe it's not a choice. At the point when you do, your life will radically change.
Mhm.
And I think the second one is the main thing we can do in life, and we should protect it like it's life, is our word. If we break our word to ourselves or to another human being, we're leaking energy, we're destroying ourselves. And I don't think we understand how important your word is. Like it's your tool to get through life. And if you don't treat it as precious as it is, then you'll struggle. And I think most of the struggles that we have are about lying to ourselves, denying things, and we're not honest with our word. So it's keeping your word and knowing that you have choice over your attitude. And when you understand those, and actually understand when you know those, when you feel those, when those are embodied with how you act, how you think, and how you behave, you change radically as a person, and change and all of these other things become less impactful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 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 yes. The thing that I'll add, because what came to mind for me is what would stop people from believing that, right? Either one of those is they may not deem themselves worthy of being different than what they currently are. And I think what happens is we end up with people in solid 100% victim mode. And so yes, I totally agree with you. And I
I'd
think
add one
that's,
thing to that.
yeah,
I would add one thing to that. A
yeah,
newborn child doesn't think like that, Michelle.
no, it
We're
doesn't.
trained because of our environment. So when I would say what you just said, and I'm sure you did, I would say it with compassion. They need an environment to allow that to cultivate within themselves, because
Mm-hmm,
they've been in environments where that didn't happen. So
mm-hmm,
when that's said, it's like, oh, they're in that state. And that's just because they weren't given the right garden to
mm-hmm.
grow in. And that's the
No,
way I
I
look at
agree.
it. So
Yeah. I don't disagree with you, because I think the rest of it is we need to understand what's holding people back. And a lot of times it is worthiness. That I don't feel worthy. I can't see that it can be anything different than what it is today. And so I say that because if that's a place that someone's in, challenge that thinking. Challenge that thinking, because to your point, each one of us is worthy. And we need to figure out what it looks like to start taking steps out of the lack of that, or the fact that we don't think we have control. Because people will make these sweeping statements, especially in change, which every human has been going through change, radical change. And then I think it started with COVID and then it's just accelerating. Is if you're saying anything like everything's changing, and I've heard this from a lot of people, um, call BS on that, because not everything is changing. And so a lot of times it's going to help to ground us in what's not. What is still the same? Are you living in the same place? Are you with the same humans? Do you have the same job? Are you still alive, right? Did you wake up today, another day? And then the other part of it is to look and start looking for ways that you bring value, purpose, whatever it may be, so that we can start unpacking worthiness, because there is a narrative and we need to challenge that thinking that we're not capable of, or maybe don't deserve choice, or other people didn't keep their word, why should I? So I think it's in that space. It's a lot to unpack. I don't disagree with you. I think it's important that if you don't feel that way, start figuring out what's getting in the way of it.
so I think you're a great example, Michelle, of the answer. Because you said some people don't feel worthy, and you've just spent 2 to 3 minutes giving people the key. And you've said it in, you call it finding out, being curious. Curiosity is the key out of that prison.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually are expressing that curiosity in the last 3 minutes. So you're literally giving the example without saying curiosity is the answer, which is kind of boring to hear, but you're expressing it. So that's a lovely thing to see. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Again, you are an inspiration to me, Jonathan. To think, I love your storytelling, because I'm right there with you in it as you're describing stuff. So I appreciate you, sir, and this time in the room. And until next time, this is Leadership Soundbites. Please like, share, subscribe. We will put a link. There was a link that we're going to put around something that you talked about, that we'll do in the description. I'm not sure what that is right now, but I'll go back and look.
Sure.
Um, And until next time, have a freaking awesome day. Thank you.